there's also the complete contradiction that Josh was pointing out as well, which is that obviously when the Tories break procedural rules, it's terrible, it's awful, it's the worst thing in the world because these people break rules for bad reasons. Whereas you saw that
we break the rules.
Yeah, you saw that struggle that he had, what was it, last week when we were recording this, or the week before, when there was the LBC caller calling about the Starmer spending scandal, about receiving gifted tickets that he didn't declare or something like that, where he was really struggling to justify it.
Well, he resorted to just saying, well, how do you know about it? Well, he declared them, didn't he? So he did it right.
Well, and but the Tory government also, after it was revealed what Dominic Cummings did, they fired him and held him accountable. So it was all made right in the end, right?
There we go.
So that's the big problem. And he has, on that same basis, a complete and unwavering trust for NGO institutions.
Oh, I don't doubt.
Yeah. You can find it if you flip through some of the introduction. I've made some notes on it, where there are a few of these institutions that he names that he unwaveringly and completely blinkers on, says, well, if they say it, it's true. There's the Institute of Economic Affairs, which he praises 2 thumbs up. They must always have the... Wait, no, not the Institute of Economic Affairs.
Well, no, the IMF and the OECD upgraded their forecasts for the UK economy, and so the idiocy of these jingoistic positions would be laid bare. Neither Jessop, Rees-Mogg, or any of the other free market fetishists argued that the institutions were now acting out of sudden irrational affection for the UK. Again, just the UK is always wrong, the Tories are always wrong, but the International Monetary Fund and the OECD, they must be right when they're making up forecasts for the future that can't possibly be proven.
Yeah, because I will say there is one good thing in the book, which is that which chapter is it in my notes here? There's one chapter in particular. I think, it's Andrew Neil, his Andrew Neil chapter, I think it is. Or Andrew Neil and Paul Dacre, where he actually talks a lot about all of the various web of right-wing NGOs that make up the British right-wing Spectator Daily Mail media sphere, and how Andrew Neil and a lot of those people have ties to them, like London Institute of Economics.
Street.
Tufton Street. He really doesn't like Tufton Street because, of course, those institutions are completely full of bad actors, people who have vested interests and are paid by nefarious people to give them the sorts of...
But our NGOs are funded by George Soros.
Exactly, and George Soros only has the best intentions for the world.
I mean, he's right, but for the wrong reasons. A lot of the Tufton Street groups, there are a few good ones there, but some of them are sort of a little bit wet and lame and give bad advice, I think. So, but obviously I'm doing that from the right and not the left.
Yeah, of course, but you would, rightfully so, as would I and as would Carl, put doubts on all of these organisations, a blanket distrust to them, because a lot of them are full of people who are not going to be perfect, are going to have their own vested interests. They are going to have their own problems and biases that are going to dictate the sorts of forecasts and ideas that they put out to the world. James O'Brien only has that problem when they're technically on our side.
Yeah, I think British politics has a softer variant of what American politics has, whereby the right tends to be a bit more sceptical of institutions more generally, and the left sees them as unequivocally good. And I think that James O'Brien epitomises that by his unwavering devotion to some institutions and not even questioning the source of the information or the validity therein, or the possibility that they could make a mistake.
Is it Conquest's second or third law where any institution that's not explicitly right-wing becomes left-wing over time?
It's certainly one of them.
I get the feeling it's that effect on James O'Gammon.
But isn't it interesting, though, that the idea of an unwavering trust and dedication to British institutions is kind of one of the pillars of Scrutonian conservatism?
Oh, yeah.
So it's actually a remarkably conservative position that he's taking there, but in pursuit of progressive aims.
But it's because, as Conquest points out, it'll inevitably become left-wing over time. And so James O'Gammon's like, we're going to win in the end because you'll just become a leftist like me. That's why I'm voting for Boris. And it's like, God, he's right.
Because we need all of those illegal migrants as a tax base.
Yeah. The Deliveroo economy. It's so
They're not paying
An
tax,
enormous
but
brain.
we need their tax
Yeah.
money.
So what we're learning from this as well,
The introduction's long, isn't it?
it is very long. Most of the chapters are quite long. It's quite a long book overall. It's like 350 pages. Jesus. Yeah, I didn't know that James O'Brien had it in him.
Yeah.
But all he's revealing the whole way through is that he is a dedicated NPC. His mind is wide open, right? His brain is an empty vessel for leftist ideas to be poured into without question.
I will uncritically accept my programming and then write 350 pages of it to explain it.
Yep. And that's what makes him such a good mouthpiece.
Yeah.
That's what makes him because that was what makes him the attack dog. Because back in university, right? So I did a media degree at the University of Salford. One of the things that we were shown as an example of good journalism and how to do a good interview, if you were interviewing, say, a politician, was James O'Brien in 2014 interviewing Nigel Farage, which, if you've ever seen it,
Haven't.
Happily, if you flip to the Nigel Farage chapter, he literally transcribes the entire thing. Because he's that proud of it. Because he's an NPC. He's a complete empty vessel for leftist bullshit.
Oh, you've got lots of notes on the Farage chat.
But he's also a complete smug, prideful scumbag and will endlessly self-promote if he gets the opportunity.
Here we go.
Yeah. If you just read through some of the questions and how he's phrasing them and how he's responding to the answers that Nigel is trying to give. Now, I will admit, reading back through it, it reminded me, Nigel didn't really do very well in that interview because he wasn't really prepared for such a hostile interview. But there's a difference between an actually well done hostile political interview, which is, I would say, the recently Stephen Edgington has been doing some absolutely fantastic journalistic work interviewing right-wing politicians like Nigel Farage, where he's putting forward the questions flatly and bluntly, but without being personally, on an interpersonal level, a dick about it. Whereas James O'Brien is just letting you know, I'm a bellend.
Well, I
despise you. I want the audience. I don't care about the answers that you're going to give me. I want the audience to know that I'm full of virtue. That whole interview serves as a virtue.
Can I give you an example of just how awful James O'Brien is? Farage says this. My argument, James, is this. Wherever we have found people who have had extreme, racist, unpleasant views, we've unceremoniously got rid of them. And he goes on a bit further. And O'Brien replies with, well, okay, what about your associations with the BNP? James, he just said he's getting rid of all the racists. It's like, yeah, but you're associated with the BNP, aren't you? It's like,
yeah, he's associated with the BNP because people like James O'Brien associated him with the BNP. Nigel Farage brags about how he destroyed the BNP.
Exactly. Do you want to know what his associations with the BNP is? If we go back to 1997, you had lunch with a chap called Mark Devin. Sorry, I had lunch in 1997. And so now I'm associated with the BNP, says Nigel Farage. What? Come on. Unbelievable. He is just the worst. I mean, a month after that lunch, Devin wrote an article. So it didn't even happen in advance of the lunch, right? So this guy's done nothing wrong. And then a month later, he writes an article for the far-right journal Spearhead, never even heard of this, suggesting the BNP and UKIP get in bed together. What? What is this?
Well, Nigel should have activated his anti-fascist radar.
Anti-fascist prophesying radar.
That all leftists like James O'Brien come fitted with from the factory that they're produced in.
Also, the notion there is that you only eat a lunch with people you agree with.
But also that you know you'll always agree with.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? I'm having lunch with a guy who's not done anything that James O'Brien can find exception with. But in a month's time, he might do something that hasn't happened yet that I can't foresee. Like, just, it's so... Like,
I found the source of why James O'Brien is so miserable. He never goes to lunch with anyone because he's terrified.
Well, you can always see the future.
Yeah.
He's terrified that he might be thinking micro N-words in their brain as he's eating dinner with them. And this might get him cancelled somewhere down the line. But, again, that was the example fed to me of good broadcast journalism, of how to conduct an interview.
Accuse your opponent of not being able to see the future, and therefore he's a racist.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing.
But again, that's why he's so useful. And that's what this book is as well. This book is a regurgitating of the left, of the Brit-lib leftist talking points. So they can throw them. Because as I was reading through that, I noticed something, which...
This is just this James O'Brien Farage interview is just a racism interrogation.
Oh, yeah, it's the Stasi.
Yeah, it's just the anti-racist Stasi.
Well, I mean, James O'Brien, in that chapter, puts his perspective out very flatly when he writes... He writes a paragraph essentially explaining racism, why one would be racist, and making it all sound quite reasonable.
Okay, where's the...
I think it's closer to the beginning of the chapter.
Of the Farage.
So you'll see that I'll have made a note around the entire thing, marking it out.
Yeah, but I can't read your writing.
Oh, no. Let me find it for you. Let me find it. So...
James O'Brien makes the reasonable case for being a racist.
Basically, yes. Here we go. He says, whether... I think it's here. Whether racist or not, discomfort. Yeah, discomfort with immigration is a constant background hum, and whether we admit it or not, everybody knows at least a little of what it feels like. If the person pushing in front of you in a supermarket queue speaks an unrecognisable language or wears a hijab, or simply looks different, the initial offence of their conduct can easily be compounded by the thought that they have somehow less right to be there in the first place than you. So that's quite a reasonable argument to make when, literally, James, they do have less right to be here than me, and their presence is actually inconveniencing me and the nation as a whole. But then he just follows that up with, it is obviously bunkum.
So James O'Brien has racist thoughts, but he mind kills himself. He's like, no, that's the wrong thought. My NPC programming kicks in and shuts that down.
Well, he doesn't realise that all of this stuff is innately built into human nature, is biologically enforced, and that actually the way it works is you give more favourable treatment to people who are genetically proximate to you than further away. That's why we give our families special treatment, and people we have no relatedness to less special treatment.
You know what's great?
That's true, but like Carl said, the NPC programming kicks in, and he says just outright, well, there is no biological reason for differences in people.
To watch the full video, please become a premium member at lotuseaters.com.